Hi folks, Dr. Pulsfer here, and I'm going to try to explain how the game industry needs people with educated attitudes. I'm not talking about degrees, but attitudes. And that's important because when people hire somebody, it turns out they're more interested in attitudes than they are in actual skills. And of course, nowadays people can get degrees in college and really not have learned a great deal because colleges are focused on making money, and you don't make money if people don't succeed. That is, don't get a degree. There are many college graduates and even PhDs who are, in terms of attitude, poorly educated, and there are lots of people with no degree at all who are well educated in terms of this context. Now, the video game industry, video game development, doesn't require degrees, whereas a lot of industries more or less do. That's probably not as true now as 10 years ago because video game development programs in colleges have become common. Now, given how much we rely wrongly on degrees as qualifications these days, there may come a time when, if you have no relevant degree, you'll be on your own and unable to get a big studio job. You may not even be able to get past the human resources people who, not having a clue about what game development is, will pay attention to degrees. And this, I've already seen this happen. Now, if you read good advice about breaking into the video game industry, that advice will include read as much as you can and educate yourself as much as possible. Even though those same advisors will suggest that a bachelor's degree is a good idea. But keep in mind, a bachelor's degree today is not much more than a high school diploma 75 years ago. It's the master's degree today that's kind of the equivalent of a bachelor's degree 75 years ago, and so forth. Everything's been diluted down, and the result is each qualification doesn't show as much about the person. So what makes someone educated? An educated person wants to know and will make a good effort to find out things. An uneducated person will tend not to bother. Here's a really simple example. An educated person confronted with a word they don't know is likely to look it up. They want to improve their understanding of language and of the world. A poorly educated person probably isn't going to bother. Worse, much worse, a poorly educated person will accept what they're told far too often without checking for accuracy. This is how the USA education system has failed, as illustrated in politics, where people believe all kinds of ridiculous notions and don't try to check things out. They listen to one person and that's all they believe. An educated person teaches himself or herself when necessary, from books or otherwise, rather than wait to take a class. Poorly educated ones will frequently whine, I haven't had the training for that. Educated people read or nowadays watch good educational videos a lot, and poorly educated ones don't. In kindergarten through 12th grade in the USA, students are told exactly what will be on the test, then they regurgitate it on the test, and fools call this education. It's not education, it's training. And it's not even good training sometimes. Unfortunately, the notion that you cannot learn any discipline without taking a class for it has become common. Well, always remember, someone had to figure things out before a class for it could even exist. I'm an example of a person both formally educated, a PhD in history, and well educated personally. I've designed many commercial games, tabletop and video, by figuring it out myself. I taught myself computers and computer networking, taught computing for many years, and acted as head of PC and network computing at a large Army medical center. I read a lot and I experimented a lot. Now, good classes help you learn quicker as you take advantage of the experience of the teachers and authors. You largely avoid the school of hard knocks in that case. Practical, hands-on classes often eclipse theoretical classes. Unfortunately, many teachers aren't good teachers. That's just the way it is. And I'm not talking just about K12, I'm talking about college and university. Now, I would have had an easier time of learning computing and learning game development if I'd had classes to take, but such classes rarely existed in the early 80s. Even computer networking, there were no classes in the early 80s for that. There were only classes for programming. So K-12 students, and now many in college, are trained, not educated. They're taught an answer to a question. They regurgitate that answer on a standardized, often multiple choice tests. Unfortunately, life is an essay test, not multiple choice. Multiple choice tests are not a good way to find out what people know and what people can do. Now, I taught video game development in college before I retired, and I've seen the educated and uneducated attitudes at work in video game development. Typically, I assign students the task, though it's more a habit they should get into on their own, of maintaining a notebook or other data store in which they recorded game-related ideas as they got them. The uneducated attitude surfaced soon after. How much do I have to include in this? Is what one of the students said. The student wanted to know the minimum rather than take the educated attitude that this was something he should do for his own good that was worth doing, and he should put some time into it. And I have to say that student later dropped out. Now, when people are hired by a smart company, what that company wants is attitudes first, skills second. I remember being in Miami at a conference, a computer conference, and they had hired a motivational speaker, quote unquote. And so he was talking to a large group, and he asked people to list desirable traits of a potential employee. And when he got done, he pointed out that 2/3 of them were attitudes, not skills. Skills can be learned as necessary. And one of the most important attitudes, in my point of view, is this educated attitude, the desire to be an active person in your learning and not passive. I could say a lot more about this. I could give a lot more examples, but I hope this is clear by now. Thanks for listening.